Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council. My name is Councillor Peter Sanford and I am Chair of the Council. My Vice Chair is Councillor Eileen Wilson. As usual, this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We also allow recording, filming and photography, so long as the meeting is not disrupted. Please ensure your phone is on silent. You should keep your microphone switched off until you are invited to speak. If participating remotely, when you are invited to address the meeting, please make sure your microphone and camera are switched on. And then, when you've finished addressing the meeting, please turn your microphone and camera off. Members attending remotely should indicate their wish to speak through a chat message in the Teams meeting. Those present in the chamber should indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand. I will ask the Vice Chair to note the order of speakers. The chat facility should not be used for any other purpose except, where necessary, to write down a simple amendment. Complex amendments should have been shared with Democratic Services in advance of the meeting. However, if we do move to a vote on any item and there is not clear affirmation, I will state that a recorded vote will be taken. Members in the chamber will then vote electronically, selecting for, against or abstain. The result will be displayed. The meeting is quorate, so we will proceed. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence, Democratic Services?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Van der Ven, Hart, Bradnam, Harvey, MacDonald, Atkins, Earl, Osborne, Rickson and Garvey. And I can see that Councillor Nieto has joined us online.
Thank you. Councillor Bhattacharya is running late. Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? Okay, I see no hands. If an interest becomes apparent later in the meeting, please raise it at that point. Item 3, this is a substantive item for this evening's meeting, discussion on consultation of a centrally led development corporation for Greater Cambridge, which you will find on pages 5 to 64 of your agenda pack. Members, you will note that we asked to review and comment on the draft response, which you can review in Appendix B. I would remind members before we begin that Cabinet will make the final decision on how to respond. This is an opportunity for all members to inform that response. At the end of the debate on this item, we will note member responses. I now invite the Leader of Council to propose and introduce the item and start the debate. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Okay, so tonight's debate concerns this consultation on the government's proposal to establish a centrally led urban development corporation for Greater Cambridge being South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City. This is probably the most significant issue that we've discussed in the last 8 years. It's significant for us as the local authority, for all of our communities, most certainly for all our businesses, and actually nationally significant as well, because this is about delivering our role in delivering on the government's aspirations for boosting the economy nationally. And we're obviously at the heart of that, because we're where all the growth happens. So we've been working for a long time now with government and government's representatives. As I think I mentioned in a previous council meeting, myself and Lucy Netzinger and the Mayor and Cameron Holloway, Leader of Bad City, met with Matthew Pennycook. And actually it was clear that the government actually understands the constraints that we are facing on growth and the problems we have. We wrote to them, I think, first time about 4 years ago to highlight the crisis in water. We subsequently had the development of Bourne Airfield held up because there was insufficient water to deliver it. So 9,000 permissions granted, but unable to build out with all the consequences of that. So when we wrote 4 years ago, and we've written on a number of occasions since then, we've been asking for government's help to deal with what's commonly termed wicked problems these days. And wicked problems are problems that we can't solve ourselves, and we can't even solve within the very strong partnerships that we have in Cambridgeshire and Greater Cambridge. And so there are problems that can only be solved with government intervention. That means legislative and cash, basically money. It was very disappointing when the money was withdrawn for the relocation of the waterworks, which would have had some quite a few benefits, actually. So, you know, I do believe that government appreciates what their responsibility is, and what's come forward here is their proposed solution to the problems that we have here. It's not necessarily the solution that we would have chosen. So, as we all know, South Cambridgeshire is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. As I've just said, our council works across partners across Greater Cambridge very, very successfully, probably more successfully than anywhere else in the country, planning new homes, jobs and infrastructure, and sustainable development. And I've come today from Northstowe, where we've just opened the new Unity Centre, which is a magnificent building, which we've delivered in partnership, very, very strong partnership actually with the Town Council of Northstowe. So we're very, very pleased with that, and that's going to go an awful long way to making Northstowe a really, really lovely place to live. And I'm very pleased Councillor Bygott was there as well to share all the loveliness, if not the sandwiches, because we all had to rush back here. So the question for us tonight is not whether growth will happen. So, you know, we already have considerable growth identified within our emerging local plan. Government want more growth. And I did describe Greater Cambridge to the Minister some weeks ago as the goose that laid the golden egg. And actually the goose, part of the goose being our planning service, our shared planning service, which has been so successful in supporting all the applications that we see coming forward. We're not supporting all of them, but supporting the good ones. So anyway, the question is not about whether growth will happen. The government's been absolutely clear that it will. And the real question is about who should shape that growth and how our local communities are represented in those decisions. So currently we have a very robust means through all our elected members of all colours and persuasions to make sure that local voices are heard. And this consultation raises really important questions about the governance, about the accountability, and about the balance that we must maintain between national ambition and democratic control. So our role this evening is to consider the Council's response, and you have a draft response in front of you, and my huge thanks to Stephen Kelly for a massive amount of work that's gone into this. We've got to be sure that the response coming from this Council reflects the views not just of this authority, but also the voices of all of our residents. And there are, you know, obviously parts of South Cambridgeshire which are going to feel the impact of the government's proposals more than others. I don't think my own village of Gamlingay is going to be facing huge growth there. But on the other hand, you know, it will face the increase in traffic and all the other stuff that comes along with growth. So I sense so far that we have a lot of agreement across political lines in South Cambridgeshire and also in Cambridge City as well. So thank you everybody before we get going for a debate which I hope is going to be convivial and actually mutually supportive. And I look forward very much to hearing contributions from colleagues throughout this chamber. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Do you have a seconder for this item? I recognise Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I will speak now, Chair.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that the main thing I'd like to raise is how I think fundamentally this is undemocratic, the proposal for the DevCo. It's practically divisive and I think professionally damaging to take away local planning powers from our planning service from local authority. We have one of the most successful planning services in the country, an achievement that has taken us years of focused transformation and teamwork. And to quote government's own words, in the consultation document, it is an effective and proactive planning authority recognized as the Royal Town Planning Institute's Planning Authority of the Year 2025. I mean, as you'd expect, that is my main concern, is what they want to do to our planning service. Our officers, as I think members are aware, they are experts in their fields. They're committed to high quality design, ambitious but sustainable development, as is evidenced by some of the developments that are coming forward. Not just that, our planning committees across both councils, and we have 3 of them, they are constructive and they want to shape growth for the better and not block it. I know there are people who think that anything to do with planning should be taken away from councillors, and I got into a discussion on LinkedIn with a well-known KC, which has drawn quite a lot of comments. But we've granted planning permission for 37,000 new homes across South Cambs and Cambridge City, which are still waiting to be built out. In the year 24 to 25, 2,264 new homes were completed, the highest figure since 2011. In short, the planning service is strategic, it's evidence-led, it's delivery-focused, and it's collaborative. And furthermore, South Cambs and Cambridge City, we are not NIMBY councils, right? We are not NIMBY councils. And the evidence of this is in our emerging local plan, which we've just finished consulting on, which has just under 70,000 homes to be built by 2045. And that includes the 7,000 I've already mentioned. So all of this we have achieved despite the challenges we've had: water supply, sewage capacity, road and transport, utilities, especially electricity. So what's the problem? What can the DEFCO deliver that we can't? And why does government think it needs to intervene in this way? And if I can say this, creating a centrally led urban development corporation to deliver growth in what is largely a rural area, I think you would agree is an oxymoron.
Could you bring your remarks to a close, please?
So taking planning powers away from us is unnecessary and will not deliver anything that we can't. But what it will do is send a message to our hardworking planners that professional excellence can be brushed aside by government decree. But also our communities, it will tell them that their voice doesn't matter. They don't get to shape what the area will look like. But one thing I'll say, if I can please, is that planning is not the problem. It's the delivery of the planning permission already given and market absorption rate. I keep saying this. Developers, do they have enough skilled tradespeople to build out quickly? But also, are interest rates giving potential buyers the buying power to actually buy? If they can't buy, then developers will not build out. It's as simple as that. So government should focus more on what will help move the market, in my view, and stop trying to tear apart our planning service. But DEFCO has a focus. I think it can help us deliver infrastructure. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. We have in front of us an amendment standing in the name of Councillor Dr. Richard Williams. Would you like to move your amendment, please?
Yes,
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move an amendment, which I think members have got before them, so I'll say a few words about the amendment and the reasons for it, and I hope that there can be a good deal of agreement across the Chamber, and we can all come together to give a very, very strong response to the government. So I agree with a lot of the points that have been made by the leader and Councillor Hawkins. And the one thing I would say, I think the leader said that this was probably the most important question the council's faced in 8 years. I think this is potentially the most important question this council has faced in the 52 years that it exists. The government's proposal is undemocratic and it is unacceptable. They are proposing to strip planning and other powers from 2 entire councils for up to 25 years. And the proposals are not supported by evidence, as particular Councillor Hawkins has set out. Housing delivery in this district is very strong. It's double the national average, and it's in excess of what's actually in the current local plans. Economic development permissions are strong. 60,000, I think, square metres of completed new employment force space just last year. And it's really good to see these points being made in the draft response. And it's also good to see things like opposition to the low thresholds that the government is proposing, which would capture things that have got nothing to do with strategic growth in the Development Corporation's powers. But the response, I think, could be significantly strengthened to make clear this council's total opposition to a development corporation. And it's particularly in response to question 2, where members will see I've made most of my amendments, and I think the response could be strengthened, but there are some other smaller amendments as well. In short, the purpose of my amendment really is because I think what we need to offer the government is partnership. Yes, we need central government investment in transport, but we need to be crystal clear that we as a council are for partnership with the government. We will not accept a form of dictatorship. So at lunchtime today, I attended one of the public workshops that the Growth Company is laying on for members of the public, and it was simply an exercise in selling the Development Corporation. It is crystal clear the government's made up its mind that it wants to remove local democratic control from planning and other things in this area. That's what it plans to do. And that's why I think we need to be very, very clear that the council does not accept that. And in particular, why I think we need to remove the last paragraph of the original response to question 2, and particularly add in a clear statement that the council objects to the creation of an urban development corporation. And as I say, other textual amendments to make clear that we're in favour of partnership. We're very willing to work with the government, but we will not accept a development corporation, because that is what should happen. We should work. We do need investment, but that can be done with the current councils. That can be done in partnership, and that's the message we should be sending. So, as I say, I think we need to be crystal clear. There is no evidence for a central development corporation, and we shouldn't accept it. I'll just make one final point, which is that in the public information event I attended today, like in the consultation document, the government talks a lot about the need for long-term planning, and the implication is that having local authorities in the mix poses some problem for this. It's presented as a sweet reason, but we shouldn't be fooled, and I don't think any of us in this chamber will be fooled by it. When the government talks about the need for a development corporation to bring about long-term solutions, part of that is precisely about removing the ability of residents to change policies they don't like through their votes in elections. And that fundamentally is the only reason for taking planning powers and the only reason for threatening to take transport powers away from councils and giving them to unelected bureaucrats. The government, as I've said before, does not think ultimately that the people of Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire should be allowed to control their city and their district. And I think it really is as simple as that. And that's why I'm against the Development Corporation, and why I think as a council we need to be crystal clear that we are also against it, that we will fight to preserve local democracy. And I'm sure many good members opposite will agree with that. And I hope we can agree across the chamber that that's the line we should take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Williams. Do you have a seconder for this amendment?
I do, Councillor Heather Williams.
Heather Williams. Sorry, too much detail. Councillor Smith, Councillor Hawkins, do you accept this amendment?
So we've given this careful consideration. I thank both Councillor Williamses for proposing this. And after due consideration, yes, we are happy to accept it.
Thank you. You wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate any tactic to stall. Definitely, Councillor Hales, I'm sure, would appreciate very, very much, along with others. But I'm afraid I will say something. So thank you for accepting the amendment and for giving it due consideration. I would also like to stress just a few points, as I'm sure others have this, but that's what we're here for today to do. Because as has been said, it is one of the most difficult, and it is the most actually upsetting for residents that I fear will happen in 10, 15 years' time when they are seeing actually at the coalface the real ramifications of this, and not necessarily as we sit here today. And I think that's something as planning committee members we are acutely aware of. And we take that role very seriously. And as has been said previously, we don't always agree on planning committee, and I think that's healthy. I think in all of our debates, it's healthy not to agree, because that means that those finely tuned, balanced decisions, everybody's got an equal say, but also that people are taking it seriously. They're not just going along with the flow. And as we say, local democracy, while we might not agree, we should always defend each other's right to have their say. And I think that's what we can do by saying no to the Development Corporation. But also, just to mind, let's say I represent one of the most rural areas in our district, and the leader referred to her ward in Gamlingale, obviously we're ward neighbours. And I appreciate what you're saying, like our area would not be a natural area to think of for growth, but yet it's in that red line. And any application that came in our areas, the government would want to get their hands on. And this is, in my view, taking control of two local authorities' planning powers by stealth. It's doing it in a marketing spin that is something that is mildly palatable. But the reality is, for something as huge as whole local authority areas in a rural area for an urban development corporation is not appropriate, and we should be loud and clear when we say that. Development corporations have been used in the past, places like Milton Keynes, and I thank officers for the very helpful presentation that was given on that. But there's a clue there in the word urban, and they were appropriate for their areas, but not for us. Local voices, as Councillor Hawkins said, would be ripped out of this. And I would say this is what we need to be aware of, not just with this, but this is a pattern of behaviour from this government. Local government reorganisation was reducing councillors, reducing the amount of people to say no. We've got the new national planning policy framework that's coming through, which makes, again, very clear that people they don't understand the countryside one iota, but also it takes, with increased permitted development rights and the like, it takes voices out of local people. And then we have this on top. So for me, it is very clear. This is power by stealth and nothing else. And as Councillor Hawkins said, we sat at the planning advisory group, and I was very clear that Rachel Reeves may have an issue with her figures, but the Cambridge cash cow cannot keep giving and bailing her out. And as far as I'm concerned, this is what it is. This isn't serious, hence there isn't serious money attached. Hence it wasn't, they pulled out, although I did not agree with Honey Hill being the site, I thought the alternative was better. But if they were serious about growth in this area, they would have been doing things before now. We will get all the pain if the powers are given to this national government with none of the gain. Once they have sorted out our existing areas and issues, then they can start talking to us about more. But until then, with as many voices as we can gather behind us, it has to be absolutely no.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Just so that everyone is clear, we are debating the amended motion in front of you now, and You've accepted it. Yeah, yeah.
So can we move to the open debate now?
That's what I'm about
thank
to
you.
do. I invite Councillor Jose Hales to speak. You look surprised. My Vice Chair thought you had your hand up.
No, I was just agreeing with the Leader of the Opposition, where I suggested that she didn't take too long, because obviously I'm fading away and I do need dinner. But I'd like to thank her from the bottom of my heart, because that was perfect timing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Councillor Tom Bygott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If you look at page 14 of this document, you can see the address for sending responses to. Cambridge Strategy Unit, 3rd floor, Fry Building, 2 Marsham Street, London. I think that really says it all. If we have a problem with development in the future, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be writing a letter to London. We won't have anybody locally that can stand up for us. And the clue also is in the name, Urban Development Corporation. This is a type of organisation that was designed or created to build cities, hence the discussion of Milton Keynes. It's a city building operation, but here it's taking over not just Cambridge City, but also the 105 villages and 2 towns of South Cambridgeshire. And as my colleague, Councillor Williams said, this is a rural area. We used to have as one of our parts of our vision that we are a voice for rural life. We stand up for the people who live in the countryside and want to live in the countryside. Now, many of these people have lived here for generations. Many others have come here. I came to Cambridge 27 years ago from Australia because with its technology industry, this was the place to come. And I deliberately chose to move to South Cambridgeshire. I didn't move to central Cambridge because I wanted to live in a rural village. And there are lots of other people who've moved to this area who want to live in the countryside and who don't want to live in the city. And it's our duty as a rural district council to stand up for those people. Now, as our response makes clear, we have cooperated completely in the past. Everything that this government and successive governments have asked in terms of planning, we've delivered. We have gotten awards for all the excellent work that we've done. There is no indication that this council is not going to cooperate on reasonable requests for the future. You know, we are preparing a local plan that aims to deliver growth. So all of these things and all of the things that we promise for the future, we've been in agreement with growth. So why is it necessary for the government to take away our planning powers? And the only thing that I can think of is that there are things that they know that they haven't told us about. That if people in this area knew the government were going to do, they would object. And that's why they want to take our democracy away. Now, it's been mentioned before that we do need investment in transport. I've been an advocate of a light rail system in Cambridge for many years. We need investment, but this development corporation is not going to give us that. And in fact, it actually very clearly says in the document that it is not going to have any planning transport powers. So any of the things that central government could do for us, they haven't actually offered to do, but they want to take our planning powers away. And we need to be very, very cautious about this. Democracy is an incredibly important thing. We can see what's happening in Iran, where you have a country which doesn't have a proper democratic government, and what's happening in Russia with the wars that they've got there. We have a democratic system in this country, and we have it for a reason, so that people can speak up for what they need. So we need to make the strongest possible message that we can send here. This is our last opportunity to object to this, and that's why we have to make our objection count by sending a strong message today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bygott. Councillor Brian Milnes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So for a government that says it's committed to devolution, isn't it perverse that we're sat here today discussing abolition of a layer of local interaction and representation? That's ridiculous. Centrally led government, DevCo, what does it mean? Well, it means different things to different people. If we look historically about this whole plan, case for Cambridge, 250,000 houses from Michael Gove, you'll remember. And it seems to be that that inheritance has carried forward to a scale of development that puts Milton Keynes into the shade, numbers-wise, as we've seen in the documents before us today. 10 times the size of Milton Keynes for Cambridge. Really? This is quite astonishing. I mean, our planning service, as we've all been saying, our award-winning planning service, has been very careful to gather the evidence of the requirements for this area and then put a plan together that actually satisfies that. And we're asked by government to supercharge that with all the constraints that we've been talking about, particularly transport, particularly water, but national grid capabilities, the utilities generally, if we're wanting to be a green economy, a carbon-free economy, then we'll need the grid power to actually feed that. And we had to, if you remember, we had to support the development of 2 substations because they weren't in the plan for the increased development. I mean, this just puts the whole thing of this idea that government, central government can be the arbiters of our future is just poppycock. And we've got this very strange thing going on, haven't we? We know we've been part of the Cambridge phenomenon. Councillor Bygott talked about it being part of the rationale for moving here. Perhaps I'll reflect that as well, but it was my wife in our case that brought us here. And the house prices that we've been talking about, the lack of affordable houses in the quantity that we would want, despite our work in doing this. So where is it going to be? I mean, 250 homes is a very small number to put that. And so there's even from the minutiae of those sorts of details in here, we've got nothing of real substance. No democratic oversight. I still don't think they've answered the question of show us why you needed this. What is it that we can't do now? Well, actually, there's only those constraints that I've already mentioned that I think are the real reasons for having anything to do with the Development Corporation, if they've got the money. But as you've said, Councillor Bygott, transport is being put to one side. So we don't get that. What about water? Well, you won't build the Fens Reservoir any quicker by having a DevCo there. So and we've got this strange relationship with the government and Cambridge and Oxford. And it's like quantum entanglement, isn't it? So Cambridge gets given 400 million and a DevCo. And then just yesterday that we see the government giving Oxford 400 million and a DevCo.
Could you draw your remarks to a close, please,
I will.
Councillor Milnes?
I'm getting carried away with my quantum entanglement. So if the government can offer us a real solution to those constraints that I've talked about, great, and leaving our planning service, our award-winning planning service alone, great. Otherwise, let's rethink that whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milnes. Councillor Paul Bearpark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make 3 points. The first is about risks to already planned development. So there's a lot of uncertainty here, and the uncertainty risks slowing down the existing development. Developers know who their case officers are, how the planning department operates, but they'll have no idea how this is going to work with the Development Corporation. So there's very significant risk they're going to put their plans on hold, or that they, at the very least, are going to slow down until there is greater certainty. My second point is very simple. This feels like a punishment for success. And the third point is it's very disappointing in how we've got to this point. There appears to have been no discussion really about alternatives. It's certainly felt to me like it's come like a bolt out of the blue, kind of served as a fait accompli by the government. And as Councillor Dr. Richard Williams said, you know, we would be happy to work in partnership with the government to solve the problems. We know there are lots of problems, including water supply, energy, skills, transport, wastewater, high house prices, the cost of building houses and land prices. And I hope the government will listen to what everyone in this chamber is saying and takes time to look at the alternatives that I think would actually have a much better chance of succeeding and achieving the government's objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bear Park. Councillor Peter Fane, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say a brief word about the case for Development Corporation, a little bit about the type of Development Corporation, which is very much covered by the amendment that's now been accepted, and then to turn to the powers of the Development Corporation, particularly over development control or development management, as we might call it, rather than development planning. The question has arisen, is there a need for a development corporation of whichever form? Well, if you say that the objective is to develop 150,000 houses and all the numbers that have been raised for labs and so on, then it is very difficult to see that that could be delivered within the boundary of South Cambridgeshire, including City, without a development corporation. In particular, because of the infrastructure deficit that will restrain the development corporation just as much as it currently restrains us. Other members have mentioned water, also wastewater treatment. We're in the situation at the moment where we're granting substantial planning consent subject to what is called grants and conditions, i.e. you can have the planning consent, but you can't actually occupy these buildings until the wastewater is sorted out. That situation cannot continue long term. As to the type of development corporation, as my colleagues will know, it's always been unclear to me as to why government should go back to the 1980 Act rather than to the 2023 Act, where Section 173 is apparently designed for a situation such as we face here, with one or more councils wishing to cooperate with government in this way. But government has clearly determined they want to go for an urban development corporation, and I'm not going to extend my comments on that. On question 8, which is the one about development management, I think there is a significant misunderstanding by those who wrote this consultation of the role of what we call planning committees. Some of you may know I'm the outgoing chair of the JDMC, the Joint Development Management Committee at the moment, but we are not, and nor do we pretend to be experts on planning matters. Just looking to see if there are any smokes and hands like those who are experts on planning. We do not pretend to be experts on planning matters, although some of us have a certain amount of experience and knowledge from other fields. And that is right, we take our advice from officers on matters of expertise. The proposal here is to replace the, broadly speaking, the JDMC, to extend it to the whole area and to stock it with experts. Those experts, I think, would find themselves extremely frustrated because it is clear they're going to operate to the same rules and the same documents as we currently operate to. The key question before a planning committee faced with an application is it good enough to approve? It is not, would you prefer us to have done this or that? Do you want to use your expert advice to suggest how we might do it better? That is, to some extent, the role at an earlier stage of the design review panels, and they have real experts on them already. Now, if you consider a situation where we have, for instance, pre-application developer briefings occasionally, and we have to be extremely careful not to make even suggestions. In fact, we do make suggestions, but we phrase them carefully as questions, and we are careful not to predetermine ourselves. Well, experts on such a development management committee, faced with such an application and told that they have nothing to do but to determine it, might say, wouldn't that be better done by those with democratic legitimacy? Why do we need to replace elected councillors with experts like ourselves who will not actually have any scope to use our expertise?
Could you bring your remarks to a close, please? Thank you, Councillor. Perfect timing. I invite Councillor Dr. Lisa Redrup to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm in general agreement with the response that has been drafted and want to thank those involved for their time and effort. I would be grateful, though, if Cabinet could please consider adding to the response to question 4, which asks for views on the proposed objectives of the Greater Cambridge Development Corporation. So this is in relation to Objective 4 on environment and climate, which is currently to deliver environmentally sustainable and climate resilient outcomes through creating and maintaining large, connected, high-quality green and blue spaces and long-term stewardship of natural assets. So I agree that this area needs much more land to be managed for nature and for the quality of these areas to be high. However, I would like to see this objective strengthened. I'm concerned that it does not mention consideration of the impact of the plans on carbon emissions and remaining within the area's carbon budget, which I believe needs to be at the heart of the Development Corporation's considerations, together with ensuring Greater Cambridge is resilient to climate change. There's also the need to avoid development harming our chalk streams through either water scarcity or pollution due to inadequate sewage treatment capacity. And there should be a commitment to ensure that the health of our local chalk streams are improved over the time period of the Development Corporation. I'm also concerned about how the Development Corporation would deliver environmentally sustainable and climate resilient outcomes when the level of proposed investment is low and government has just finished consulting on MPPF changes that would undermine many of the environmental policies in the draft Greater Cambridge Local Plan. The draft local plan has been developed based on extensive local consultation, and there is support for a plan that thinks about not just how much development and where, but also sets out policies to reduce and mitigate environmental impacts. Based on this support, the government's plans for the area need to ensure that they really do set the standard for how our cities, towns and villages can adapt to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Redrup. I invite Councillor Helen Leeming to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to be quite brief. My main comments on this are to do with the democratic accountability of how this is structured. I think in whatever format it takes, local democratically elected people will be the minority on this board. And I think that is fundamentally wrong. I think regardless of what happens with LGR, whether they double up the elected councillors of the proposed unitary, we will always, whoever is elected, will be in the minority. And I think from a democratic principle, that's just fundamentally wrong. There will be people who are experts, but don't have connections to the local communities that will be affected by the decisions that are made. One of the things, I've only sat on planning committee a couple of times as a substitute, but for all of us who sit on planning committee, we live here. We see the developments that have been made, the choices that have come forward and the things that are built. We understand the issues that officers may raise, and in fact we go out on site visits and we know the geography. This is our home. I don't even know whether the constitution of this board will be local people who have any understanding of Cambridge City or South Cambridgeshire. And my final thing is, what would success look like? It just feels so nebulous. I don't fully understand why they're doing it or what they're fully aiming for. When someone starts off on a large project, when someone sets off on a large project, you usually have an end point, an aim. What is success for the DevCo? When do they finish? Who judges that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leaming. Councillor Richard Stobart, please.
Chair, thank you very much. So we've heard quite a lot of reflection on why people came to Cambridge, of the juxtaposition of city and countryside, of those kind of special relationships which have existed in our communities, which make Cambridge the place it is. And I think this kind of opportunity to reflect on why Cambridge functions as it does, and I think this has actually defied analysis, and yet we could probably say ourselves, from our experience, from our knowledge of the way Cambridge works, is that it is a special place and stuff happens here that can't happen elsewhere. And I think it's wrapped up in the process of, and we've talked about local democracy and how people relate to each other, how we listen to our residents, how we review needs and so on. And we are part of that process. And I think the things that have been well said about people coming in from the outside and perhaps ignoring or forgetting that those kind of relationships exist. So perhaps it behoves us to, as a result of what we're going through at the moment, to reflect on what makes Cambridge, Greater Cambridge, the countryside and the city the special place it is, and how we can make it better. So that's our job, but it's a time for reflection, and I think we should take that moment.
Thank you, Councillor Stobart. I invite Councillor Shrabona Bhattacharya to speak, please.
Thank you. So my comment is a bit different because I didn't live here for a long time. My comment would be someone who moved to Cambridge and made a new home. Okay, I lived in different parts of the world. I also lived in Edinburgh City. I also lived in Belfast City. I love the ambience of Cambridge City and the academic branding of Cambridge, where I worked for 10 years. A very world-class university, 126 Nobel laureates, 4,000 startups or more than that. It sounds like a great from the outside. But believe me, I have never lived in such an underdeveloped place in my life. This is neither a village where I live, nor a city, nor a time. Everything is half done or not done, half-cooked meals, not fully baked. People are crying for shops, people are crying for bus, swimming pool, a very small bus shelter. People are crying for those small stuff in a very developed country, first-class developed country. I still do not fully understand why this place is so underdeveloped and in so many areas. I give my 100% to this place through various social work, community commitments, because this is my home, this is my hometown. So I am giving back to this place where I am living. This is not a choice, this is my commitment. I would really like to see Cambridge on the top of the facilities and everything that Cambridge can provide to its to its people and residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Bhattacharya. Councillor Sue Ellington, please.
Thank you. I think the first thing I want to say is what a pleasure it is to see this council coming together to address this issue. And as the last council meeting before we possibly dissolve into whatever, it's real joy. But perhaps the other thing I just wanted to raise is why 25 years? I'm quite sure I shan't be here to see that, but I do really feel that somebody ought to explain why 25 years is wonderful and that's what's proposed. It's not reasonable for us to ask for it to be 10 years and then review in order to see where we're going, because once we're in this organisation, there ain't no coming back, folks. And we really do need to have our exit plan sorted before we go in, if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellington. I hope every confidence you'll still be a member in 25 years. Councillor Mark Howell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, I've just been looking through the document once again, and it's obvious that there's no accountability if this was to be set up. There's nothing there, really. If we make a mistake and we're on planning, then somebody can shout at us when they see us next. Fortunately for me, I've always had a fellow member who likes that type of stuff, so they're the ones who get shouted at more than I do. But it's accountability, that's what it comes down to. And when you see it, they say, but you will have a leader. You will have a leader from South Cambs, the city, and also the county. No, we won't have three, we'll have one, because the others are all going, aren't we? We're all being combined. And also the 25 years, something that's been mentioned many times. I really, really don't think we have the right to bind the hands of our successors into this particular mishmash and what it is. We don't have that right. That's wrong. Yes, we can do what we like within our term and we slightly expand it, but 25 years for this, I don't believe in this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a plea for those villages where a lot of development has already taken place, where the infrastructure hasn't really followed, and whatever hue this development corporation takes on, or whether it happens or not, I would want to make sure that those villages that aren't part of the strategic sites, so not having a lot of development in the future, are still taken into account, because it's those villages, it's the people in those villages who are also contributing to the success of Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Does anyone else wish to speak? I see no further requests to speak. Oh, Councillor Hales. I thought you'd had a turn once already, but go ahead.
That was an inopportune one, Chair. Right, I'm going to break the habit of a lifetime and say something here. It was something that Councillor Ellington said just now, and I think has been generally bandied around the chamber. It is lovely to hear that we are essentially in rude agreement, which I think is fabulous. And so I'll leave that bit there. But the bit I wanted to actually say was, Sue mentioned about May, when we all start the shenanigans. I would just like to say it's been a pleasure working with everybody who isn't going to stand. And for those who are, jolly good luck. It would be lovely to see us all back here again so we could finish the last hurdle. So thank you for the time that we spent together. It's been a blast. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hales. I see no further requests to speak. I invite Leader to sum up.
Thank you. If I respond to everything, I might have to have a couple of minutes extra, but I'll be as quick as I can. So that was really interesting. Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to pick out some of the highlights. Councillor Bear Park said, it feels like our success is being punished. Actually, that really, really resonated with me, and I don't think we should lose sight of it. A number of people have pointed out that, you know, we're being given one option. There has been no discussion of what the alternatives might be. It's become more, in all the conversations I've had with various partner organisations over the last few weeks, it's become very clear that these proposals are not without risk. Most critically, in relation to you know, the government wanting to optimise the national growth, actually what they're doing is introducing uncertainty where certainty prevailed. And that uncertainty will undoubtedly have national as well as regional and local consequences. We're already hearing from developers who have huge confidence in our joint planning authority, saying, well, we don't know what to do now. Do we submit? If the DevCo is created before our planning permission is given, does it then transfer over into the DevCo and the whole process starts again and we spend more millions of pounds? Or do we just hold fire and wait until the DevCo is created? I don't think there's a sense, actually, that DevCo will give them an easier ride. Interesting, because I keep asking that question. So I think there's a risk of the government shooting themselves in the foot here, and I think we need to make that point very clear to them. We've made it very clear about what will help move the market forward. So we have a lot of permissions that remain not built out. The problem is not giving planning permission, because we give planning permissions all the time, as do most district councils. The problem is that we don't then have control over things actually building out, and that for many of the reasons that have already been mentioned. There's been a lot of discussion about the lack of democracy in this. This is stripping the planning powers away from us. I think the 25 years is very concerning because there's been no justification for it. And I think that's a very good question to ask. Why 25 years? Why 1 year, actually? We agree we need investment. Absolutely. We have problems here which, the previous administration were experiencing and of which have all come to a head in the last 8 years. The government's saying they need long-term planning. Well, isn't that what we do in our local plans? Our local plans are long-term planning. Governments come and go. Actually, the last thing they do is long-term planning, and goodness only knows what a change government will do to this. The whole lot might go in the bin. Huge concern over unelected bureaucrats making decisions. And I think once our residents realise that planning decisions to affect them will be made by people who haven't got skin in the game, who aren't accountable, as we've just heard, who can't be unelected or got rid of because you don't like what they're doing. These people, they may be the same people there for 25 years doing stuff that people don't like. So I think removing the democracy out of planning in an area like ours where we've been so successful at delivering planning is actually difficult to understand, and it creates a huge inequality between us and the rest of the country. The rest of the country have democratic planning powers, apart from a few places that are definitely on the naughty step, but we are far from the naughty step. So why should we be different to everywhere else in the country? And I think, I can't remember who now said the real ramifications probably aren't going to become apparent for a long time, by which time it will all be too late. Councillor Fain said there's no clarity. Oh yes, we talked about the numbers. Well, actually, I don't recall this government ever actually saying the target is 150,000 houses. Is it 250,000? Is it more? As far as I know, this is part of the problem, which somebody did mention. We don't know what the destination here is. We don't know what the vision is. Where does government want to get to? And I think it would be really helpful if we had some idea about numbers, because we know, because we have an excellent planning authority, we have huge excellence within Stephen Kelly, we know what's possible. And there's no point in just coming up with massive numbers that are undeliverable, because then we just set this DevCo up to fail. I think forcing a model of urban development into a rural setting, as has been mentioned, is going to be a misfit. This is very, very different to what's happened elsewhere. Councillor Redrup said, could we strengthen the dialogue in question 4? We'll work with you. So yeah, question 4, yeah. We'll work with you to strengthen that up. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, it was Councillor Leeming who said, what will success look like? Well, we don't know, because government hasn't told us what success looks like, and I'm kind of hoping they know, but I'm not sure they do. And I think there's a lot to be said about what makes Greater Cambridge special. And there's a real risk that we lose what makes it special. Why Councillor Bhattacharya came to live here, because this is why most of us came to live here, because this is a special place. And if we destroy what's special about Greater Cambridge, actually, then we won't be attracting the AstraZenecas and the Abcams and so on of this world. I was interested in what Councillor Bhattacharya said about this being an underdeveloped place, and I think we need to have a bit more thinking about that, because I think a lot of people would argue that it's overdeveloped, but I think you were talking about amenities for communities. So I think we need to look into that, because I don't for a minute think a DevCo is going to solve that problem. So Councillor Ahold said we don't have the right to bind the hands of our successors. Well, the shame is, it's not going to be us binding anybody's hands. This is going to be government binding hands. It would not be us, because we simply would not do that. And again, the points about that Councillor Williams made about villages. It was Councillor Wilson, made about villages. Those that aren't part of the government's focus and strategic plans actually potentially becoming second class and ceasing to be important. I think there's a massive risk about that. So that's a lot of negatives, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we recognise that development cooperation could play a constructive role in tackling our major national challenges that actually is holding us back from the transport. And even though they haven't said they'll take transport plans, I think they have made it perfectly clear to the Combined Authority that if the Combined Authority can't deliver on the transport solutions that are needed, then actually the DevCo will take those transport plans. So kind of nothing is sacrosanct here, and the Mayor is very, very well aware of that. This has got to be an opportunity to build on our outstanding track record of delivering really high quality growth. As I say, Northstowe, where I've been today, so exciting. The communities they really like living there. The same as people living in Cambourne really like living in Cambourne. So we're already delivering great places. And a lot of it is sustainable, and we probably have the greenest local plan in the UK. And again, I think our residents really like that, and I think our businesses and our developers respect that. So this does feel like a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I will be reiterating to ministers that actually we can work with them. You know, we've worked with them thus far. We work with numerous other partners. We can work with them to deliver on government's ambitions for local, regional and national growth. And if we fail to do that, then get the sledgehammer out. But I don't think it's necessary at this stage of the game. But having said that, whatever the outcome is of this consultation, we will continue to work with our partners, and we'll continue to work with government to the very best of our ability and in the best interest of our residents and our places and our businesses, because at the end of the day, that is what we've been elected to do.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, members, for all your feedback. I'm sure Cabinet will consider your thoughts when submitting the response. I declare this meeting closed at 19:36. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.